All right, so I'll go ahead and call this meeting into session. And the first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. And board members, we do have a change to the agenda, as you know. Let me read that very quickly. Consent agenda, added item 8.17, service agreement number 19-66, Academic Staffing Incorporated to provide speech and language services on behalf of exceptional student education. This item is considered an added emergency item due to the district's current shortage of speech and language pathologists. Looking for a motion, board members.
Move it.
Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? Hearing or seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. All right, so sliding down on your agenda, board members, there are no recognitions, no visitors, no public comment, no administrative appointments. 7 committee and staff reports. We covered those at the workshop. Moving on down. Moving to the consent agenda. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bryant. Any discussion? Hearing or seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. All right, board members, moving way down on the agenda to Superintendent's Human Resources Recommendations. 9.1. This is an information item. It's Deferred Retirement Option Program presented by Mr. Chambers. 9.2. Forgiveness of days for employees on October 9 through 11, 2018 due to Hurricane Michael, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent, Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Looking for a motion.
Move it.
Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. 9.3, Personnel Recommendations presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent, Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
Move it.
Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. 9.4, Employment Separations, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent, Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
Move it.
Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? Hearing or seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. 9.5, Employee Transfers, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent, Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bryant. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. 9.6, Reinstatement Reimbursement of Sick Leave due to Line of Duty Illness Injury Medical Examination, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent, Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
Move it.
Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bryant. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. 9.7, Leave Without Pay, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent, Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
Move it.
Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? All in favor, let's vote. Motion carries 5-0. Discussion agenda, item 10.1, RFQ 19-01, Construction Total Program Management, TPM Services, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
Mr. Chairman, I would
Yes,
like
sir.
to make a motion that we take this off the table.
Motion by Mr. Bryant, take it off the table. Looking for a second.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Destin. Mr. Attorney, I don't believe there's any discussion here. We just vote. Is that correct? To take
Yes,
it
sir.
off the table?
Correct.
All right, so all in favor, let's vote. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, so it's off the table. So board members, looking for a motion.
As stated at our workshop the other day, I will make a motion that we I'll make a motion that we accept the superintendent's recommendation for this RFQ.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bryant. Motion by Mr. Bryant, looking for a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Walker. Any discussion?
I just wanted to clarify for the public the terms of the contract.
It states that the term of the contract is for a period of 5 years. And as in previous contracts that we've put out for TPM, it says that the contract may be renewed for one additional 5-year term upon mutual agreement and negotiation of the parties involved in that contract. So that necessarily doesn't come before the board in 5 years unless the district's position was to bring it as an agenda item on the board.
Any recommended renewal would come to the board. The board would have to approve that, yes.
For, in 5 years, it will
right.
have to
Correct.
come for renewal.
That's correct.
For the board. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Rush. Anything else? Board members?
I have one question. The RFQ asked or stated a 5-year contract, is that correct?
That's my understanding.
And so when you go into negotiation, that's already set, correct?
That's correct.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. Any other questions or comments, board members? All right, so we have a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. All right, item 10.2, tag on bid over $25,000, Allen J. Fleet Sales, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval, tabled at the regular meeting of October the 8th. Need a motion to take it off the table.
I'll make a motion, we take it off the table.
Motion by Mr. Bryant to take it off the table. Looking for a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Walker.
I guess I can second it even though I voted
You
against
can.
it, correct?
Well, if you don't, I will. So,
Okay.
yeah,
You can.
okay. So we've got a motion and we've got a second. We're not allowed to discuss table motions, so let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5.
I didn't raise
All
my hand,
opposed?
so.
All right, motion carries 4-1. All right, board members, so it's off the table. I'm looking for a motion.
I move it.
Motion by Mr. Walker to accept the superintendent's recommendation. Looking for a second. Pass the gavel. I'll second. All right, Mr. Destin, call the question.
Well, we have discussion first,
Want
right?
to pass it back? Yeah.
We can discuss it after you've seconded it, right? This was about the right at $200,000 worth of money we're going to spend on new vehicles for maintenance department. A motion was made at the last meeting when we tabled it to bring back an option for us that would be, and I looked a little closer at the motion today. The motion was to bring back a lease to purchase option and/or a plan to finance. And I think we actually were also talking about, and it may have been a separate issue and probably was, but I'll discuss it just because it's part of the rationale behind. We were discussing on how to come forward with an incremental plan to cover some of the portables that we have in the county, which are around 170 now. And some of them are covered, but not many. And I believe, Ms. Thrush, you said at the meeting that there was supposed to be a plan that was going to come back to us by this meeting to tell us how we were going to do that. I have not seen the plan. And we did not get the information we requested on a lease to purchase, at least not in a meaningful manner. I checked with the Florida School Board Association and called a couple of other sources, and there are lease companies that will do exactly what we discussed. They'll buy the equipment, lease it to you for a number of years. At the end of the year, you pay the dollar like we do on the telephone, and you own the equipment. We didn't get that option. We also didn't get any option on how to finance and spread the cost of this out so that we would loosen up a little bit of money to do particularly some of the covers for the portables, which is required by state law, and we are out of compliance as we speak. So, you know, the only statement I'm going to say is the priorities that we have on how to spend $250,000, counting the next item, in my opinion, are off. The only way that we as a board, we have two methods that we affect what goes on at the district: writing policies, and we control the purse strings. We didn't get any of the information we asked for, which bothers me greatly. And so I could not support to go forward with this until we get those options we asked for. And, you know, everybody can vote their own conscience on that, but we can get the equipment and address the other issue if we just would. And if we're not going to exercise our constitutional authority to do these kind of things now, I don't know when we ever would. So I'll make a motion to table this to the next meeting to give staff opportunity to provide those information tidbits that we asked for at the last meeting.
Can we still make?
I'll second your table. But are we still in discussion on the
Yes.
the first item?
So that becomes a question for the attorney.
Well, now, once he's moved to table, which actually I think setting it to the next meeting, probably the motion is to postpone it to the next date certain, but a motion to table is not debatable, so.
And that's why I made a motion to
Yeah, but
table
but now it's on top of the motion to consider this item. The motion's already been made.
it. Motion to table always takes
And
precedence.
he's moved to table that
Right.
action item.
And I've seconded it.
Yep. Just want to make sure we all understand what's happened.
But we can't have a discussion
Nope.
on the table.
Nope.
No discussion on the issue.
Not on a motion to table.
Mr. Kutsaratus, I'll have to ask you to hold your remarks, sir, until we make a vote on this
That's fine.
motion to table.
Yes, sir.
All right, since there's no discussion on the motion to table, I'm prepared to call the question. All in favor of tabling the item, please vote now. All opposed? Motion's defeated.
Now you can tell us.
Well, let's see, do you have anything else you want?
Oh, well, you know, I'm willing to hear what everybody else has to say now.
Okay.
I will have some other motions coming, though.
Very good. All right, Mr. Kutsaratus.
Okay, so I know that Steve Bolton brought some information at the board workshop, and that Mr. Destin asked for more detail. And so I know that we haven't had that opportunity to get what you asked for this meeting between Thursday and today. So we
Okay.
will
Well,
work on that.
I did a little preliminary calling around, and the School Board Association, I think, can put us in contact with companies that lease equipment to districts.
Okay.
Okay.
And I would just add, you know, in regards to leasing, I don't believe our finance officer was involved in the rough estimate quotes that Mr. Bolton presented to us.
Correct.
So I would think, for
In the
me,
future, yes.
that needs to occur with any forthcoming proposals for leasing. And I mean, I would just say that in regards to Mr. Destin's comments, and then my vote to second his motion to table, again, I did ask for, at October 22nd, to have a plan. At the workshop, a rough guesstimate was presented to cover walkways to our portables, but I would like to see a more detailed plan and maybe out-of-the-box ideas and a discussion not only of funding resources, because I recognize the need for the fleet maintenance trucks, but previously the district has presented the press box project. We, as a board, voted not to approve that. My understanding was that was approximately $108,000 that I don't believe has been reallocated to another project. Ms. Scallon provided board members with a historical figures for each year for the sale of surplus items. And, you know, without knowing whether some of that money has been reallocated, those are two funding sources we could potentially look at for covered walkways. in addition to possible lease options for the fleet maintenance trucks. And then I would like us to consider the possibility of using our own adult students at OTC in possibly a variety of ways in regards to planning, preliminary work, in regards to covered walkways. We have adult students who weld, who perform construction. They've sold houses to the general public. We have a need. We have a need that we don't have the current staff to fulfill. So an option that Mr. Bolton presented was to possibly put something like this out to bid, but I also want us to consider all options in a plan that might be presented. I only have one meeting left. That's why I had hoped that a plan would be before us by tonight's meeting. And I know a lot has happened this month, but those are my suggestions.
Thank you.
It's time for public hearing.
Yep, I'm gonna go ahead and call the question first.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion, Mr. Walker? Do you have something? All right.
Well, what I would like to make a suggestion that we do and look at is, truthfully, in years past, we had set in a policy at one time that when we set a portable up, we included the canopy in the price. And we did that, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, probably money and whatever, we got out of that. And as we all know, and I think that the statute simply says that if you build a portable, technically you're supposed to have the canopy, but they give you a 3 or 4 year leeway to put the canopy there. But what I would like to suggest, Mr. Destin, is before I leave, and then whoever would take my place, but I'd like to put in motion to sit down with Nick and Steve and Rita, and we'll have one more meeting that we could do this with, to look at, we got our priority list of, all the roofs and all the things we do. And by getting with Miss Scallion, what I think we could possibly do is put together a plan that perhaps Miss Scallion, and with Nick and us looking at the roofs we plan to fix, like for instance, we've been discussing, Edge and Valpy, the STEM Center is kind of the top of the list of the ones we need to do immediately. But let's look at where the money's already been in the budget for these roofs and all these kind of things. And truthfully, I really think by sitting down with Ms. Scallion that we may be able to redirect some of our priorities there in this construction money to be able to not affect the vehicles, but also be able to accomplish what Mr. Destin and Ms. Rush wants to do. And what I'd like to do is we meet at the next board meeting, which will be my kind of last hoorah with that, and then I'd like to have it in motion to be able to come back to the board and say, hey, here's a plan that we can put together that Ms. Scallion and Nick and I have been able to do, and maybe relook at some of the priorities that we have. And then if Ms. Scallion says, yes, I can put this amount of money towards the canopies, and we can still move, whether we lease vehicles or buy them, we still leave that money there. And it's no big deal to me, other than I think we need the vehicles. And if the board would like to support that, I really think that I could come back with a plan after meeting that the board, I think, might satisfy everybody concerned. And if not, then we move on. And Mr. Destin, I've kind of been wanting to mention that and see if you would be agreeable to that.
Well, I think that's a wonderful idea, and we've got 2 weeks to do it.
Right.
Therefore, I would make a motion to postpone rather than table this till the next meeting.
Are we still in discussion? Are you suggesting that under the TPM?
No,
Okay.
I don't know how it's gonna be until such
Okay.
time as we meet with Rita, till we come back, and then we'll tell you board members if we're able to work out, and then we'll say Ms. Scallion and is this, she says she can find funds, and we may be readjusting something that we've listed and maybe higher on the priority list in the canopies, and we may do a little adjusting. And then, like I said, if the board doesn't like that, then, you know, we haven't lost anything, but I really think we could put a plan together to do that.
I would certainly love to give them the opportunity, and at that time, we can make a decision.
Right, and then
on
the
this
board can still
200,000.
decide at that point in time, and I think that we maybe could satisfy two real critical needs at the same time, and that's what I think we want to try to do. Because we know both of them are very important. Naturally, probably if we have to look at kids against vehicles, we know that may be a little bit with the kids' favor, but we do know both situations need to be addressed. And if you're making a motion, I'd happily second it.
Okay, that's the motion to postpone to give Rita and the staff opportunity to explore that option for us to the next meeting.
Motion to postpone supersedes the motion on the table.
If made as a substitute, yes.
Motion to postpone till the date certain is what he's making.
All right,
That's
so
it.
he's made a substitute motion, and I take it, Mr. Walker, you're
Uh,
seconding the substitute.
Whatever I need to second.
All right, any discussion on the motion, and the substitute motion, and the second by Mr. Walker?
This is just to postpone this item to the next board meeting,
That's it.
giving 2 weeks to come up with a plan.
Yep.
All right, any
Could I
discussion? Yes,
have a
ma'am.
point
Sure,
of clarification?
Sure.
Okay, the estimate that Steve gave you in the last meeting to do all of the canopies, as I recall, is around 600,000. 700,000. That's the proposal you want us to look at.
I don't think necessarily, at least, and Ms. Thrush
We're
can straighten it out.
Mary Beth, so overall, it may well be, but we'll discuss the most immediate thing, and then the big overall plan, that will be, hopefully, you'll be having your staff work on that, but right now, we're gonna be trying to probably come up with 150, 200,000 to to immediately be able to deal with the ESE canopies and stuff like that. And then if we can put a long-range plan together for the total 700,000, we'll do that, because this board definitely needs to go back to the policy it used to have. If we put a portable, if we move and put a new portable up, we need to make sure the price is included to do the canopy when we put the portable up. And if we do that, then we'll avoid this in the future.
And I'm looking for an incremental plan
Right,
over a number of
exactly,
years.
exactly.
I think Ms. Thrush, you'd be happy with that also, hopefully.
Well, I want to make sure that we have a detailed plan.
Yes.
You know, a rough estimate of $700,000 that, to my knowledge, didn't go through the CFO. It was based off of a bid that was done a while ago. We really need to have a well-thought-out plan. Look at each facility, look at each portable. I had listed specific schools that, you know, again, as Mr. Destin said, there needs to be a prioritization. I listed a way to prioritize, but I need something more sufficient than we were presented at the workshop on Thursday.
So just for clarification for the public, you're more interested in the ESE portables?
We
that's
have portables without covered walkways
Oh, I
to
know,
them.
I've
We
seen
have
them all.
ESE students in them, we have gen ed students, and
Yes,
it
we do.
changes year to year which students are in the
Mark,
portables.
we need to vote
I know.
on, we need to vote on the
I know,
motion, Mr.
that's all right.
Dixon.
I know, I don't want to cut Ms. Thrush off. I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and hold this at this point, because there may be more discussion. We're going to come back to this after the public hearing. So I'm going to recess this regular meeting, and I'm going to convene the public hearings. Board members, if you'll slide down on your agenda to item 17.1, public hearing for the adoption of a revised school board policy 03-14, home education, presented by Mr. Steve Horton, Assistant Superintendent MIS, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. Is there anyone here tonight to speak to this particular item?
Move it.
Seeing none, motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion, board members? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. All right. Second one, 17.2, public hearing for the adoption of a new job description for Assistant Route Coordinator Transportation, presented by Ms. Lindsay Maxey, Program Director, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Is there anyone here to speak to this item tonight?
Move it.
Seeing none, motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion, board members? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. All right. Adjourn to public hearings, reconvene the regular meeting. Let's move back up to 10.2. So, we were in the midst of clarifying which portables we're talking about, and I think what I understood Ms. Thrush to say is we're talking about all of them, okay? Is there any other
All portables.
Right.
A
Any
plan
other-
for all
questions or comments, board members? Discussion? Because we're going to vote on the motion to
To postpone.
postpone. Okay? Any other comments?
An incremental plan is what I understood.
If there's a way to pay for it all in one swoop, I'm sure
Yeah, that
we'd
would
be
be
agreeable
wonderful.
to that as well.
We'll look at it.
All right. All in favor of the motion to postpone, please raise your hand. All opposed? All right, motion carries 4-1. All right, moving on. Item 10.3, tag-on bid purchase over $25,000, Jerry Pate Turf and Irrigation, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Tabled at the regular meeting of October 8th. Looking for a motion to take it off the table. All right, so how long does this stay tabled if we don't make a motion to,
Well, it was tabled to this meeting.
I understand. So we're looking for a motion then, if we're gonna try to
If you're going to
link
try
these
to
items.
further postpone it or whatever, I would propose to
I'll
come
make a
off the
motion to
table.
postpone this one also to the next meeting to give the staff option to tell us a way to wrap them all together.
We don't have to take it off the table to,
Well,
receive his
if
motion.
he's postponing that action, so I would suppose we could just postpone that motion.
All right.
okay.
So
I'll
I got-
second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Destin, second by Ms. Thrush to postpone it to the next meeting. Any discussion or comment? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed. Motion carries 4-1.
One question, Chairman. The lawnmower in question, it's going to be used at more than one school or just one school?
It would be designated for Choctaw, but with,
We can use it anywhere it's needed?
we could. They're difficult to transport, but
Okay.
you could.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else? Good. All right, there are no items moved from the consent agenda. So moving now to construction program owners' representatives' business. 11.1, Mr. Walker.
Just to let you board members know that the attorney and Mr. Kucharatis and Rita and I will be meeting with to decide the contract, and he bring it back to you board members at the next board meeting, just to make you aware of the fact that now that y'all have approved the first proceed on, we'll probably do that one day this week,
Okay.
okay?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Walker. All right, item 12, Information Technology Seat Management, CACI Task Order Number 2-121 for Walton Beach High School for the installation of data drops, presented by Mr. Dustin Keith, Specialist, Seat Management, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Looking for a motion.
Move it.
Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. All right, so Mr. Attorney, your business, sir.
Only one item, the FISBIT, the insurance carrier for the district, has assigned the latest suit that was filed to the Sniffen and Spellman firm for general defense, and would just ask the board to confirm that you are acceptable with that action.
Need a motion?
Yes, sir.
Looking for a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Destin, second by Mr. Bryant. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0.
And I have nothing else.
Thank you, sir. Madam Superintendent, you got some out-of-state field trips, and you may have some other items, ma'am.
Just a couple of things. Do we have a report on the increase in students we have enrolled from the displaced students for hurricanes? It keeps going up.
Thanks, Ms. Jackson. Board members, it's up to about 145 as of today based on data entry, and sometimes that number lags a little bit. Just for information purposes, we have the ability to request an alternate survey date for our FTE collection. We did capture on the 12th, and we had session that day. The state says if you expect a 5% increase in reportable FTE, then the alternate survey date would be appropriate, and that would be about 1,000 students. So we're not going to approach that number. So we talked to Ms. Jackson this morning and don't believe that that would be the case. The other issue is the capture being Friday. If we had an alternate survey date, we would have to be class size compliant again at a new date. So that could very likely require additional resources in terms of instructional out there. So we think we're in a spot right now. So I'm monitoring closely the numbers in the classrooms to make sure that we do what may be necessary temporarily or longer term if the enrollment continues to go up. But right now, we're in pretty good shape.
I do have a question for Mr.
Yes.
Horton. So what zones are we seeing the biggest increases coming?
Destin Elementary has 20 enrollees. That's by far the largest. It's interestingly spread out across the district. The other ones are at 10 or under, but we're seeing it both north, central, and south. So it's not a whole lot of rhyme or reason to it. A lot of it's where family lives, and so they're coming in and moving in with those neighbors or relatives.
I have
Rush?
a
Yes,
question about FTE for busing, for transportation. So do we typically have the whole week for FTE count for transportation? So to do morning and afternoon?
So I'll have to double check on that with Mr. McGinnis and get back to you on that to make sure that we have a, number one, or have been able to report the appropriate bus survey or survey information for transportation. And if there's a separate alternate survey, we can request just for transportation if it's appropriate to do so.
Because if we just have one day,
Right.
that would be concerning.
It does extend, like the enrollment FTE is over an 11-day period, so the transportation window, I think, has been cut in recent
Yes.
years, but it is more than just the 1 day.
Okay.
So we'll do some research on that and get back with you.
Okay, thanks.
I just have
ma'am.
one more matter.
Sure.
Terry Schroeder and I have been talking this afternoon. FLDOE has requested that they need to borrow a team of counselors from our schools district in Little Calhoun County. They have quite a shifting around of students over there. Some schools will only partially be opened, and children are, this has been traumatic for children. And I'm just letting the board know that Terry has put together some of our mental health counselors and some of our psychologists, and she'll be going over there November 1st to assist that county with those children will be coming back to school and just helping them readjust if they're relocated somewhere, they're away from their friends, they're away from what they normally do. They're concerned that there may be some children who could use those services. And I'm just letting the board know.
All right,
That's
thank-
all.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Superintendent. All right, Mr. Walker, board members' business.
Another thing.
All right, Mr. Destin.
Nothing tonight, Chairman.
Okay. Ms. Thrush?
Do we have information posted about flu shots? Because unfortunately, the week that we missed school, we had an interruption of our flu shot schedule. So I just kind of wanted the public to know. I know our schools are doing a good job of
Yes, they are.
letting parents know that if you had signed up your student to do a flu shot, those have been rescheduled. I know many of those have been rescheduled for this week. If for whatever reason you miss that paperwork, you can still do that paperwork thanks to the rescheduling. Florida did report their first child death from the flu already this fall. So that is an opportunity available to those parents who wish to take it. I also wanted to let people know that opening night for the Crucible at Niceville High School is this Thursday at 7 p.m. It's a great production by the newly formed and very active theater department. So very excited for those groups of students and instructors at Niceville High School. And then just to remind our employees, open enrollment, I know we've received emails and probably gotten some snail mail, but that's a huge important item for all of our employees to really pay attention to through November 26th.
Thank you, Mr. Rush. Mr. Bryan.
Just a couple of things, just so y'all know, in just a few minutes, the all-county chorus presentation is going to be going on, so it looks like we'll be able to make it over there. So it's going to be exciting to hear those students sing. Also tomorrow, Bob Sykes celebrating 60 years at 9 o'clock. So if you went to Bob Sykes or taught at Bob Sykes or anything, they would love to have you come and visit. And then also on Friday, I was at Antioch Elementary School for their Aviator Day, which is kind of like their school carnival. And I ran into 3 custodians, and they are big fans of our school board meetings. And so I told them I would give them a shout out for watching and being informed. So to the Antioch custodians, good job that y'all are doing over there, and thank you for tuning in. And that's pretty much mine.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bryan. All right, so we're now at the section on public comment. Is there any more public comment? All right, seeing none.
Lamar,
Yes, sir, Mr. Walker.
Rita, you and Nick, about 2 minutes after the meeting, I need to see y'all. Okay?
Anything from staff? Mr. Attorney, anything? We're
No, sir.
good? All right, we're adjourned.
All right.